The file for the hanging I used came directly from a built-in template in the Hoop Designer software. I'm going to go ahead and click on the wizard in the upper left, and I'm going to click Open under Template to find my template. Under the hangings, the 6x10 size hangings, you could use any of these shapes that you want. I chose the first one, and I'm going to click OK. It opens up the wizard. I'm going to change the width of the hanging. I'm going to be using one of my larger hoops. It's going to change the size proportionately, and I'm going to make it 9¼ inches wide. You can see that it changed the height to 15.3 or 15.03. I'm going to make my other changes to the fill and to the lettering once the design is on the design space. I am going to click Apply to apply my resizing to it. Under instructions, you can click on that and it will open up a PDF of how you're going to stitch the hanging together. You can either print it or you can come back to it later when you're ready to stitch. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit OK, and it puts the design onto the design space. I'm not going to be using the skate, so I'm just going to click on it and delete it. You're going to notice the lettering. When we look over here at the sequence window, the lettering stitches directly after the quilting stitches, then we stitch our lettering. I'm just going to leave this lettering on here for right now so that we know where it needs to stitch in the design after I create my new lettering. I'm going to go up to the top toolbar and I'm going to click the text tool and then just click on the workspace. It opens up the text property window, and you can choose one of the built-in fonts in the software. I chose cursive, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in hello. I'm making kind of a large hanging, so I set my height of my lettering at 2 inches, and I'm going to hit apply. Let me bring everything back into the same screen. And the other word, hello, I'm going to go ahead and just select that, copy it, and paste it. Come back over into the text property window and type in spring and hit apply. Now I have my hello spring. Kind of offset them a little bit. I'm just going to select them both, and we're going to change the color just by coming down to the color palette at the bottom, right clicking on the color that I want, and you can see that it changed. So with my lettering selected, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to kind of move it where I want it to be in my hanging. Put it wherever you want it to be. Now, if we look over here in the sequence window on the bottom right again, the lettering needs to stitch directly after the quilting. So I'm just going to select the lettering and I'm going to move it up so that now it is underneath the quilting. There's our text. Here is our old text. I'm going to go ahead, select it, and delete it. Now, I wanted to change the fill, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the fill. It opens up the fill type window, again on the right. I chose a shape to fill in my hanging. The pattern, I used number 6, or 106. And I set the density, that's how far these lines are going to be apart, to 38.5. How do I come up with these numbers? I played around until I figured out what I wanted it to be. You can put any number in here. You need to start with the high number though, so it spaces the lines out a little bit so that when it does this stitch, it looks nice. Hit apply. You're going to notice that it's put the center of this fill right here in the center of the banner. I don't really like that. I don't want it to stitch like this. You can choose, after you select it, you can choose the shape icon, and you notice it put a little pink dot right there where it starts. So all I did was take that pink dot and brought it straight down and then click. And this is how I got that shape. You can continue to play with this as much as you want. Let's go ahead and select it again. I can move the dot down more. Click. and you can see it changes it a little bit more. Keep playing with it. If you select it and you move that dot like over here to the side, let's see what that's going to do. It makes the lines in a different direction. Play around, do whatever you want with the fill. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it back to where basically I kind of had it. Whoops, wrong dot. So play with it until you get it how you want it. What I suggest that you always do is do a slow redraw to make sure everything is where it should be. Here's our placement, here's our tack down, here's the quilting, here's our lettering, and then the design finishes as it should. At this point, I would save the file. I would save it as the C2S first, and then come back and save it again. And this time choose the format for your machine from all the formats listed and do a save. And that's basically how I changed the built-in template to what I wanted for my project that I'm doing. To create the flowers that I used on the hanging, I went up to the top to the Shapes tool, and under Flora, there are several flowers you could use. Here's a clover, flower 3, flower 6, flower 7. Any of those would be great to use. I know that I use flower 7 for one of them, so let's go ahead and bring that onto the screen. You can see that when it brings it in, let's just look at the size, it's 3.5. I could change it. The biggest flower I made for my hanging was 4 inches. Now it's going to depend on how big your hanging is, the size of the flowers that you decide to make. So remember, this is just artwork right now. This is just a shape. So I added some quilting. So you just kind of right click, utility, create an outline. I made the distance, I think 10 or 12. Let's just go with 12. I want it to be the inside. I want it to be rounded since this shape is kind of rounded. You can hit preview to see what it looks like and then hit OK. How this flower is basically going to stitch is I'm going to hoop batting. I don't need stabilizer because the stitch count on these is going to be so low. I really don't need stabilizer. So I'm going to hoop the batting. I'm going to put the fabric that I want for the flower on top of the batting. It's going to stitch some quilting. It's going to stitch the flower center, and then it's going to come back and I'm going to turn the hoop to the back side, put a piece of fabric on the back, and it's going to stitch this outer stitch to stitch my flower together. Right now we're just building the parts of the flower. So this is going to be my first quilting line. Let's go ahead and repeat those steps and make another quilting line. I'm going to come down to utility, create outline. I think I set it at 0.12. Again, these are numbers you can play with. I want it on the inside. I want it round. I'm going to hit OK. And I only did 2 lines of quilting on this one. I wanted a flower center. So now I'm going to go up to the drawing tool, choose ellipse, hold down my shift key and draw a circle. Select it and then just kind of move it over to the center of the flower. Adjust it if I want to, move it where I want to, and that's my flower center. Now I wanted a little detail inside of the flower, the center of it. So I went back up to the drawing tool, and this time I chose spiral. Now there are different types of spiral. I'm just going to leave it at the single, and you can change how many times it goes around the revolution. I left it at 4. I'm just going to click OK, hold down my shift key and draw a spiral. Select it and then move it over into the center. So now basically I have the steps of my flower that I created. Let's go over here into the sequence window in the bottom right, and let's just look at the steps. Before I start assigning stitches, I want to get all my steps in order. So this very first one, that's that outer outline. That is going to be, remember, to stitch the whole flower together. So I don't want it to stitch first. So I'm going to right click on it, come down to order, and bring it to the front. So now the first thing that stitches, that's going to be some of my quilting, my circle for the flower center, and then the detail in the flower center. And lastly, that last stitch that's going to stitch my flower together. So I can select everything at this point, right click on it, convert it to a run, come up into the upper right, and under type, I made everything a bean stitch and hit apply. So now I've got my run stitches assigned. But all these stitches now, everything's going to have to be a different color to make my machine stop. So let's go back and grab those two quilting files. And I'm going to change the color by coming down to my palette at the bottom and just picking a color. Right click on it and it's going to change the color of that. I need a separate color for the flower center because after it does that quilting, I'm going to lay down a piece of fabric for the flower center. I don't need a placement. This is so simple. I'm just going to cut a square, lay it down in the middle of the flower, and let it stitch it down. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll just pick something yellow for that. And then this detail in the center, I can change it to another color. I'll make a dark brown. And then my outer stitch that stitches it together, it's already a different color. So right now I can take this again, I can resize the whole thing, save it, go through, save your C2S file so you don't have to recreate this again. You could just come in and edit it. And then I would go back and save it as my machine format and pick any of the machine formats that you need and then save it. And that's how this first flower was created. One thing I do want to show you too, let's go ahead and make this realistic where it looks more like how the actual stitches are going to look. The center, maybe I don't want a bean. Maybe I want to make it be a motif stitch. So you can open it up and you can choose any of these motif stitches that you want. Let's kind of start with, let's start with this one, 105. Now I'll tell you, if you leave the pattern length up here at the top to 10, that's going to be way too big. Let's just go ahead and look at it. And you can see how large that is. If you drop it down to like 3 or 4, hit apply. And that looks kind of cool, don't you think? A pattern like that. Again, you can change it. Maybe you want it to be 4. If you don't like how this area right here isn't filled in, let's zoom in a little bit. You can come up to the shape key, hit it, and let's select it. And now you can move these points around. Let's just try moving some things around. Bring that down a little bit. Kind of bring that over. Try to make it more of a little curve like it is in here. If I want this to even come up a little bit higher here, we can do that. Just kind of play with all these little points. And then when you click, you can check it. If you still don't like it, again, come back and move things around a little bit more. But I think that this is kind of a cool effect. So you could play around with that and that would be kind of neat. You could click on it and maybe you don't want it to be a motif. You can change it back to a bean if you want. Go back to the motif. At the bottom, a stem stitch might look kind of nice. Hit apply. So that's an option. Maybe you want it to be a candle wick. Again, pattern length, that's kind of too big. Let's drop it down to 4, see what that looks like. So again, that's a cool effect, but it's totally up to you what you want the flower center to be. This is how I created one of them, and let's look to see how I created another. For a different flower choice, let's go back up to the Shapes tool in the upper left, go back to the Flora category, and let's choose this one that has a center already in it. Click OK. Again, you can resize it whatever size you want it to be. You can see up here at the top the size it is, or we can go over on the upper right to the transform key and you can just type in a size you want it to be. I think it's nice to have varying sizes of the flowers. You don't want them to all be the exact same size. All right, so on this one, you're going to notice when I move it that the center is attached. So if I select the whole thing and ungroup it or break it apart, now my center is a separate piece. Do the exact same thing where you select the outer line. This is all artwork still, remember, and come down to utility, create an outline, and set it wherever you want it to be. You want it to be on the inside. I want it to be rounded again. Preview it, see if you like it. Change the distance if you want. Click OK. Do the exact same thing again. Outline, create the outline, bring it in as much as you want. Make sure you check inside, round it, click OK. Do it as many times as you want. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to select my center, and I think it needs to be bigger. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, put it where I want it to be. And again, you can do that exact same thing where now we can go back up to the drawing tool along the top menu bar, and I'll choose spiral again. Maybe I'll make it go around 5 times this time. Hit OK. Hold down the Shift key and draw a spiral. Select it. Bring it to the center. I can see that this is a little bit too big. Let me zoom in. It's a little bit too big. Still a little bit too big. Put it exactly where you want it. If you want to make sure that these two things, that the spiral and the outline is in the center, both of these are centered, select both of them and hit the center tool and it will move it over to the center. Now let's check our steps to make sure everything is in the order it needs to be. If I click on the first one in the sequence window, it's my circle. I don't want that to stitch first. Again, I want these 2 quilting files that are going to be my quilting once I assign stitches to them. I want those to be stitched first. So as they're highlighted in the sequence window, I can right click, come down to order, and put them to the back, and that makes them stitch first. Then the next thing is the stitch that will stitch down my flower center fabric. After that, it's showing that it is the last stitch that's supposed to stitch my flower together, but it's not the last stitch. Let's go ahead and right click on it, click order to the front, and it puts it at the end. So now that I have everything in order, let's go ahead and assign stitches. Since I'm using mostly bean stitches, I can select the whole thing, convert to, run, make it be a bean stitch, and hit apply. Now we need to go back and make sure all of the steps are a different color. So my quilting, those first 2 steps, let's just make it be purple. I'm right clicking at the bottom palette to change those colors. I need that inner stitch that stitches the flower center down, kind of make it yellow. My spiral, I need it to be a different color so that the machine will make a stop there. And then my outer stitch that stitches the flower together, it's a different color from everything else. Again, to double check, come up to the slow redraw along the top menu bar. Just check to make sure it's stitching. That's all my quilting. Flower center detail, and then put the flower together. So I have everything in the order it needs to be. Again, you can select it, you can resize it, save it exactly as you did before, This is how I created the second flower. For one more flower shape option, you can come up to the top menu bar, click on the drawing tool, and choose flower. Hold down the shift key and just draw the flower shape. You can select it. You can change the size of it by coming to the right to the transform box. Type in whatever size you want it to be, hit apply. And on this one, you can do those exact same steps where I'm going to right click, utility, create an outline. Oh, let's make this one the distance 0.15. I want it on the inside. I want it to be rounded. Hit OK. And I can continue to do that same thing. Utility, create outline. Make it the distance you want it to be. Make sure inside and round is chosen. Hit OK. Let's do it one more time on this one. Utility, create an outline. Inside, round, and hit OK. Now at this point, I want to center in my flower. So I'll go back up to the drawing tools along the top menu bar, choose ellipse, hold down the shift key and draw yourself a circle. Select it, put it over in the center. Again, if you want make sure that flower center is centered into the flower, select everything and hit the center key. You want something inside, a detail inside of your flower. I'm going to go back up to that drawing tool along the top. I'm going to choose spiral and let's just leave it. And let's go ahead. This time I'll make it 6 revolutions. Hit OK. Hold on the shift key, draw myself a spiral, select it, move it over to the center. I can select that center and that spiral, center them both together, and I've created a new flower. Again, let's check and make sure that everything is in the order it needs to be. This outer line, remember, that stitches the flower together, so it needs to sew last. If I right click on it and come down to order and bring it to the front, it stitches last now. So there's my quilting, my quilting, my quilting, flower center, flower detail, and the last step to stitch the flower together. Again, I can select everything, right click, convert it to a run, make it a bean. You don't have to make it a bean. It could be a 2-ply, a single run. It's whatever you want it to be. Last thing we need to do is to change colors to make the machine stop. So I'm going to select all of the inner quilting files. I'll just come down to the palette at the bottom, right click on a color to change it. I'm going to go ahead and choose that flower center, change it to a color, change the spiral inside to a different color. The outside is already a different color. And here's my flower, the third one that you can go ahead and stitch out. Again, save it, save your C2S file, save it in your machine format, and you're ready to go. The last thing I need is a leaf. Leaves are just going to fill in the spaces between the flowers. So let's come back up to our shapes tool that is in the upper left. Again, we're going to go back to that flora category. And look at this, we have the perfect leaf. Select it, click OK. Size it to the size you want it to be because it comes in, as you can see up here, at over 4 inches. So I'm just going to size it down a little bit. Now it's more like 3 inches. I wanted my leaf to have a little bit of detail. Remember, these are raggy, kind of simple flowers, but I want the leaf to have a little bit of simple detail to it. So I'm going to draw veins in it. And don't get all freaked out thinking you can't draw. I can't draw either, but this is so simple. Let's go up to the upper toolbar, click on the drawing tools and choose the pin. Now basically, I'm just going to make some V shapes in here for the veins, and then I'm going to bring a line down the center. I want to kind of put these draw them in a logical order. That's going to save me time later on, so I don't have to go and do a bunch of editing on my lines. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to start over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to click, drag, click, drag, and right-click to end it. I'm going to come up this way instead of coming back over here, because that would make a jump going all the way across. This is going to make a shorter jump. I'm going to click, 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 right-click to end it. One more time, and I'm going to start up here on the left-hand side again. Click, 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 right-click to end it. Now I'm going to come up to the top of the leaf, and I'm just going to make a line coming down the leaf. Right-click to end it. Let's zoom in a little bit, because we're going to do some little editing on these lines. Honestly, that doesn't look too bad, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the shape tool on the left-hand side. And let's start here at this bottom set of veins. I can right-click on the line, add a point, and kind of bring it down. Give it a little bit of shape. Do the same thing over here. Right-click, add a point, give it a little bit of shape. Now you can see the lines moved. I'll continue to do that just by adding a point, moving the line, add a point, move it. And you can, if you wanted swirly lines in your leaf, by all means, go ahead and make a swirly line in your leaf. Come up here and do the exact same thing. Add a point, add some shape to it. And you can play with this as much as you want. I'm going to do the same thing to this leaf, the vein coming down the center. Let's zoom in a little bit because I want to make sure that it's hitting all the points I want it to hit. Let's make sure it's at the very top of the leaf. I want to make sure that this hits where I made that actual V. And let's get to where we can see this one and this one, these points. Maybe move it a little bit. Move that. And again, I can right-click anywhere on this line to add a point and give it a little bit of shape. Right-click on the line, add a point, give it a little shape. And let's come up here, get everything in view, and I will add a point here, give it a little shape. All right, so I think that looks great. Again, if you want to resize it, you can. But let's put our things in order over in the bottom right in the sequence window. The first thing that stitches is the final outline. So I'm going to right-click on it, order, move it to the front. Basically, this is going to stitch it just like the flowers. I'm going to put down hoop batting, put fabric on top. It's going to stitch all of the veins. Then the machine will stop. We'll go to the back side, put fabric on the back side of the hoop, and it will stitch this final outline. So let me just go ahead and make sure everything is a different color. Let's choose all of those veins. I'll pick that green, choose the outline, and I'll right-click on the color I want it to be. And now this is my leaf. It's as simple as that. Right here, I see something where that line is going outside of the outline. Let me just click on it and basically bring it down. Easy peasy to edit if you want. So let's say now you're going to want more than one leaf, right? And the leaves aren't going to be very big, really. Again, this one is 3 inches. I might even make it, let's just say 2.8. And again, I'm just throwing out numbers. Hit apply. Now to save me time, hooping and all that, let's put all of the leaves into a hoop. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to select hoop, and I'm going to pick my 5x7 hoop, hit apply, hit OK. Here's my 5x7 hoop. And let me go ahead and I'll move one of my leaves up here because I want to stitch these all at once. Copy, paste, put another leaf here. Maybe I want to mirror image this one. I don't want them to all be exactly the same. Maybe I even want to make this one a little bit bigger. Again, variation is going to be better. Copy, paste, move it down, and let me change the size just a smidge. Copy, paste. Let's try putting one here. I need to leave enough space between because I'm going to be cutting these out. Let me mirror image that one. I can move this one over still a little bit to make sure I have room to cut in between them. I always like to have an odd number, so let's copy and paste this one. Bring it down here. If I have to, I can angle it a little bit. Again, so that I have enough space between here that I can cut these out. So let's come over here to the sequence window. We want this to all stitch where it stitches all of the veins first. Then we're going to put that fabric on the back side. And it's going to stitch all of the outlines. So let's go ahead and I'm going to grab these outlines. I'm holding down the shift key, picking them. This last one, it already stitches last, so I don't need that one. I'm going to right click, click order, and to the front. So now let's see how this is going to stitch. If we select them all, and let's center that in the hoop. And to do that, all I have to do is hit the center line. Whoops, sorry, wrong one. Let's go ahead and undo that. I'm going to come up here to the ruler, right click on it and say center origin. And now it's centered it in the hoop. Select everything and let's just watch to see how it's going to do that slow redraw. I'm going to get rid of the hoop. And I'm wondering why I can't do the slow redraw. But nonetheless, it will stitch out all of my veins first, and then it will stitch out all of the outlines. Save this file, and you're ready to go.